Hello and welcome to another episode of the Top Dogs podcast here on the Field of 68 Media Network. My name is Rob Dosser, and I am fired up because I got one of my favorite basketball nerds on the show with me again today. CJ Moore from The Athletic was in stores and in Hartford, and he was there for the top 10 showdown that turned into a top 5 beatdown. CJ, UConn against Marquette. You wrote a story about Donovan Clingan after the game and the impact that he had. You have another story coming up. I don't know. Can I tease it? Can we talk about what it is? Do you want to spoil it? I don't know. I'll let you handle it. Handle
You can
teasing that
tease
thing.
who it's on. It's a profile of Cam Spencer. It's gonna be a minute because I got some other things in the works. But yeah, I'll be doing something on Cam Spencer. He's one of my favorite guys to watch in college basketball this year, and I don't think they'd have a chance to repeat without him. Like I think he's very. I think I'd almost argue he's the second most important player on that team.
Behind Klingon.
Hmm.
Yeah. See, the thing that makes UConn so good is that I think you can make the argument that like
For
five
like
different guys are the most important player on the
for sure,
team. And
for
that's
sure.
that's just kind of
Yeah.
how they're built. Before we get into all that, and we'll talk about Klingon here in a second. I do just want to hit you on. Was this your first experience playing, seeing a game in Hartford, seeing the game in the XL Center? What'd you think of it? Because I think you saw the absolute pinnacle of what that building can be.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was full, it was energized. The only thing that hurt it was Marquette forgot to what time the game started. Actually, they showed up on time. They played for like 8 minutes and then they were like, we're done. So that hurt the energy a little bit, but no, it was alive, it was good, it was everything college basketball should be. So I thought it helped a lot of people and I thought it was good. It was I told you on text. The only thing that was weird is, man, that interview room smelled like old hockey players.
It really is. The XL Center is not the most beautiful building design. It's not the newest, the most
No,
chic, the most up to date, if you will.
what's
Um,
what's funny is my lift dropped me off because apparently there's no like media parking, so I just decided to lift over, and my lift dropped me off, and I was kind of looking at my phone before he dropped me off. I was like, "Are you sure? Am I here?" Like, I actually walked across the street the wrong way. I was like, "Oh, it's right there."
Yeah, it pops up out of nowhere.
It does.
Um, compare the environment at the beginning because the one thing that I kept hearing from people that were there is that this is the best they've seen it in a long time in that building. For the people listening, they probably already know this, but just to kind of set the stage, Gamble Pavilion is the on-campus
Mhm.
arena, and that tends to be the more lively environment because you tend to get more students showing up there. You tend to get more lively UConn fans, I guess is probably the best way to say it, that tend to be imbibing a little bit more. Whereas when you go to the XL Center, it's a little bit more of people driving in. Sometimes it's the after work games where you have the crowd coming in their suit and ties, and it's not quite as loud and as raucous in that building as you will get in Gamble Pavilion. So to hear that it was just this insane environment in XL is a very good sign. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that it was Marquette coming to town, Tyler Kolek coming to town. But you've been to the Fog probably more than anybody that I know. Just compare those, like what you saw on Saturday versus what a normal game in Lawrence is like.
I mean, I don't think anything can compare to Allen. The one thing that's hurting probably the Excel Center here is like KU has student sections on both sides, both
Hmm.
baselines, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think UConn just has it on one baseline,
Yeah,
right?
it's on the one.
And so I think that probably hurts it a little bit, and as far as like the noise level and the just kind of the kids go. I mean, kids go crazy. Adults don't necessarily always go crazy. But to me, it's the building's almost kind of like I think at its best it could be like Creighton, which that's kind of like an NBA type arena, where it's just a big more like an NBA setup. I mean, obviously the XL Center is super old, but it is like that's the setup, right? Like
Hmm.
a hockey NBA arena. So Creighton's pretty good. I think Creighton and Louisville are like the best I've been in terms of like that, like more NBA style arena. The best NBA style arena is in Indianapolis at the whatever they call that thing. Have you been there? You've been there,
Yeah,
haven't you? Yeah, you
Banker's
remember.
Life, is that what it is now?
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
man.
been there. I've been there a
Per
bunch for the Champions Classic games. I'm gonna
yeah,
push
yeah.
back though. MSG when it's
MSG is really good. MSG is really good. But the best environment I think I've been in this year is probably that Arizona Purdue game.
yeah, for sure.
At That was really good. But no, MSG is awesome too. That's good. But I think at its best it could be kind of like the Creighton, that building where they pack that thing and hey, UConn's about to go there, right?
Yeah,
So
the biggest thing you got to be able to do if you got a building that big is fill up every single seat because there's nothing worse than
definitely.
having 14,000 people in a 16,000 seat building. It's much better to have uh 10,000 people in a 10,000 seat building when you got 15,000 that want to get in. You know what I mean? Like you want to be able to have people clamoring to get those tickets and not someone saying, "Oh, look, you know what? This is $17 on StubHub. Let me go in and jump into this game."
Yeah.
All right,
And
let's talk.
they were lined up outside beforehand at the doors and the students were like rushing in. So whenever you see that, like,
That's a
all
good
right,
sign.
it's a big game. It feels right.
That's a big game. All right, let's talk about what actually happened on the floor there because it felt like for me, uh, the thing that stood out to me the most was early on. It felt like they were able. Kolek was able to get to his left hand. They were able to attack those ball screens. They were able to figure out how to navigate the drop, and
Mhm.
then with about 6 minutes left in the first half, something clicked. I don't know if it was just Clingan woke up. I don't know if it was they stopped getting stuck with Carabane on switches on the Kolek. There was they went on the UConn went on this run 24-8 to close the half, and it just never got any better from our. I was expecting them to make a run in the second half, and it never showed up. Was that your biggest takeaway? Just this is what Donovan Clingan can do. This is who he is, and this is the impact he can have on a game.
Yeah, it was almost like the Monstars came in and took the powers of Kolek and Oso. But what I think really happened is like Klingen's presence is just in the back of your head. And I thought that Kolek was trying to like put guys in jail and keep
Hmm.
them, like on his hip. But then he also knows like, shit, I got this big dude looming. And I thought that what they did a really good job of is just getting bodies around him, and they have such good positional size that like everybody's so long, that like he was getting passes deflected way more than he usually does. And there were times where he can hit those little tiny windows and knows like the right timing on when it's passed, but he was hesitating. And I think it was just all about Donovan. And there's a play I put in my story. Um, I think it was in the second half at some point where they have an empty side ball screen on the left hand side. He goes baseline. Um, Oso's kind of coming from like the elbow area basically, and he throws up that lob that like they always get that right. Like
Hmm.
unless you've got somebody on the other side just taking him out somehow, pumping him before he can get to a spot, like they're gonna get that. And um, Clingan was in like the middle between Tyler and Oso. And that's really like if you're an offense, you want a big guy in that no man land, right? Like where he's not putting any pressure on the ball and it's going to be hard for him to get back. And that dude just looked up in the air, like targeted the ball like a center fielder, like
Hmm.
backpedaled, jumped up and knocked it out. And you have to be every bit of 7'2" and freakishly long and actually be able to move to like pull that off. And that to me was like, this is the only player in college basketball that could have stolen that pass, that could have broken up this alley oop. And I just thought his presence was in their heads. And like there was a time where Oso could have Tyler dropped it off to Oso in the middle of the lane. He could have just taken one hard uh, step and just dunked it on because Clingan wasn't even
Yeah, that's
looking.
the one. That's the one I saw too. Because Clingan kind of got his feet tangled up, and he was like stuck
He
leaning on his
jumped.
basket. Yeah.
He jumped with Kolek, which he did a really good job of staying on his feet. Like he talked about after the game, I've
Mhm.
got to jump after they jump. And but Kolek got him up in the air, so he was out of the play. And freaking Oso's really good at that floater, but like, dude, you can just step and dunk on that one.
Mhm.
But there it is. Klingan's in his head. He misses it long, and it should be 2 points. And it was in that late first half stretch. And I think I put two clips, back-to-back clips in my story of late in that first half when Marquette just needed something, just a little tiny spark to keep them, get a couple buckets, and like if they could have got it within 10, and then maybe second half they come out and maybe put a little game pressure on them. But I thought that stretch, they were just toast after that stretch, and they couldn't get anything to fall. And I think the game was over at halftime.
What's going on, everybody? Rob Doster here from the Field of 68, and I need to tell you about a partnership that we just signed with Autograph, a fandom company co-founded by the GOAT himself, Tom Brady.
Brady in the gun. Touchdown, Patriots!
I can't deal with my clogged Twitter feed anymore. Every single tweet gets 3 responses from some Twitter bot promoting gambling picks. I just want to read the articles, man. I just want to read stories. I just want to listen to my favorite podcast. I just want to consume the content that breaks down my favorite college basketball team, and I want to do it all in one place. Now I can with the new Autograph rewarding fandom app. That place exists. And here's the best part about it. The more content you consume about your favorite team and the more reward points that I rack up, the better my chances are going to be to score one-of-a-kind fan merch, discounted tickets to games, or other awesome items and experiences on the Autograph app. So go download it, use that referral code F68, that's F68, and get access today. And hey, if you do, maybe I'll get my buddy Tom to send you a thank you note. Yeah, no, it really was. And I try to explain this to people all the time that are saying, like, his block numbers are this, his steal numbers are that. The impact that Clingan has defensively is the shots that aren't even taken, right? The shots that end up in turnovers or end up in a contested 3 because of his presence at the rim. Like, you got to be able to know what you're looking at and watch the film and see Tyler Kolek drive. And the ones that always stand out to me is that Clingan is effective when the point guards come off they're going against drop coverage and they come off the screen and they go and they dribble to the rim and then they dribble under the basket and they come around the other side. That's when like that right there is the impact of Clingan. They don't get a shot off. They don't get a shot at the rim. Their passes in there to the big guy and you have to dribble around to the other side and all of a sudden the action is dead. And those are the ones that really stand out to me with Donovan. What are your other thoughts on UConn after seeing them up close and personal? And I know you were at a practice and you watched them. You got a chance to spend some time with some of the guys. What are your other thoughts on the team?
What's most impressive to me is I think sometimes the climb. I talked about a little bit of this in my story and asked a question about it to some of to Danny afterwards. It's like sometimes the climb is easier than sustaining. I live in Kansas. Like that's what's been so impressive about Bill Self and Kansas program. Like year after year after year, no matter who's in there, they keep competing in the Big 12, winning Big 12 titles, giving themselves a chance at March. And the fact that how many guys they lost after last year, and then already getting to that mountaintop, and then coming back, and this year, like even Florida, I put this in my story. Even Florida, they lost 5 games that next year, and there was some spots in that season where like they were just kind of off, right? Like it was hard to sustain it all the way to March. Man, UConn has not let up. And maybe some of it's been the injuries and like, all right, we've got to really bust our balls to make up for Donovan out, and make up for Carabin out, and make up for the freshman point guard, or not point guard, Stephen Castle being out. Maybe that's been part of it. But I think seeing their practice, I think Dan is freaking relentless, man. And he just does, like, there is a standard and you better beat that standard every single second. So I think that is something that really stood out to me being around them and watching them this year too, is like they just don't let up. It's kind of Houston's kind of that way. And like that's why Houston's the #1 in the computer rankings, is because when Houston plays a crappy team, they are going to pound that team. They're going to beat the crap out of them no matter what the score is. They're going to play it like a 0-0. And I think UConn's got a little bit of that in them right now. And they're going to destroy like whoever's in their path. And but they got a tough one coming up Tuesday, just because it's tough to go in that building, Creighton. And Creighton's got, the one other guy that could make that play I was talking about, now that I think about is Ryan Cotler. Like he's pretty special too. Now UConn's just got so much more depth and so many more dudes than Creighton, who's like a 3-man team. But that looking at their schedule, like that one, and then obviously back at Marquette, like those are the two spots that could maybe trip up. But I think regardless of what happens the rest of the year, I think that is the most dominant, best team in college basketball, and I really hope we get to see UConn, Purdue, because I think Purdue's pretty dang good too. Like, obviously they lost yesterday, but hey, losses happen. Like I think I'd really love to see that matchup because it's the most dominant defender in college basketball against the most dominant post player on the offensive end in college
Well,
basketball.
yeah, you mentioned the Purdue thing, and I wanted to circle back on that because when you look at every good team around the country and you look at some of the best teams in college basketball the last 5 years, everybody has a night or two or three or four where they go on the road and they slip up and they don't show up and they're sleepwalking, and maybe it's an early tip in the central time zone and you're just not ready for, or maybe it's a later tip than you expect. It's a Thursday night and you're distracted because you had to write it. Whatever it is, there's always games where you just kind of sleepwalk and don't show up.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue had that happened with Purdue at Ohio State. Ohio State more talented than they look on paper. Chris Holtman's gone, a little bit of boost of energy. What do they call it? The new coach bounce, right? And they come out and they beat Purdue because Purdue wasn't ready to play from the tip. And that hasn't happened to UConn at all. And it's not even like there's that many games that are close, right? It was at Villanova was a game where UConn kind of needed a little bit of luck down the stretch to be able to hold on to that one. At Butler, at Xavier, but those were months ago. It's just the way they've been able to kind of systematically. You know what I compare it to, CJ? Last year I said that it was like going against UConn was like waiting for the avalanche to happen, right? Being at the bottom of the hill and waiting for the avalanche to come because you knew at some point Jordan Hawkins was going to rip off 3 or 4 threes in a row, or Clingan's going to come in and all of a sudden they go to that defense where they press you with Hassan Diarra and Joey Calcaterra, and they're going 2-2-1 and they're forcing turnovers and they get 3 straight buckets off layups. You're just waiting for that run to happen. This year, it's almost like you're trying to push a boulder uphill going against them. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they're not as explosive. I would make the argument they're not anywhere near as talented as they were last year, but it's just it's a slow grind. It's almost like a boa constrictor waiting to choke you out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're probably more disciplined and um, what I wrote about in the top 25 this morning is, um, you know, okay, you get the giant off the floor,
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of breathe a little bit, right? And then they bring in Sampson, and they totally changed their ball screen coverage to where he's hard hedging, and now you got dudes flying around a little bit more. And what's impressive is they can make that switch just like that, and the other guys who are on the floor can adapt to the new guy that's on.
Have you seen
And
that? Do you remember seeing that from other teams? Like be able to go from playing drop to hedging hard like that, like this, and be just as effective in both of them? Because I don't really remember it.
I mean, Connecticut last year played a little bit different. Obviously, he said when depending on which big fellow was in, but it's a good question. I'd have to think on it. But yeah, I think most teams like their plan is their plan, and it
Mhm.
doesn't really matter who's in. But so that's kind of cool about them too, is that I mean, they're two different teams, depending on which big guy's in, and offensively too, they're different. And what they run is different, and that's pretty dang impressive because like I was going to come back to this when you're talking about Purdue. I watched it. I tried to watch a little bit of it last night, the Purdue game, and they were minus 14 with Zach Edey off the floor, and Matt Painter pulled him with 4:30 left in the first half. Purdue was up 3. They go into the half down 5, and
Mhm.
he finishes with 2 fouls. So like, one, sometimes you play your dudes with 2 fouls, but two, like Purdue needs him on the floor, where Connecticut can probably survive that 4:30. Maybe maybe it only is a 3-point difference or something like that. There's not as much drop off for Connecticut when Clingan goes off as there is when Purdue goes off. And Purdue's got some decent inside guys too, but they're just another team when Zach Edey's not out there.
Yeah, it's the Samson. I think we said this at the time, but having him get thrown into the fire in the games when Clingan was out, where it was like, dude, you got to figure it out now. Like, we don't know when this dude's going to be back. We have 8 games here that you got to play. It's go time now. And I think that gave him a level of confidence where he's like, we can win when I'm on the floor. I just got to kind of go out here and be 6'11" and athletic and run around and do all the things that I'm capable of doing. It's fun to watch. Where would you rank this team compared to last year? We had an argument about this on press row at the Kentucky Auburn game. Like, who's better? Was it last year's UConn team? Was it this year's UConn team? I may be kind of giving away something that Talia Goodman has coming out, but she was at the All-Star game this weekend and asked Jordan Hawkins, and Jordan Hawkins kind of looked at her and said, I can't say what I want to say, so I'll just say us. Which team is better?
Well, if this Connecticut team finishes it off, they will have had the better season.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as A games, like you play your A game, I think it's probably last year. But I will say that, like, as awesome as Jordan Hawkins was, and he could go on one of those runs, right? Like you were talking about. I actually think that Cam is better in that role because he does so many things. Like he's basically like a point guard in that shooting role. And his passing and his intelligence, and he probably, I don't know, who do you think guards better between those two?
I mean, neither of them are out there for their defense. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah, but I think Cam probably is he might be a little smidge better there too.
I think Jordan was a better on-ball guy.
Cam's better off ball.
I think Cam is a better positional defender. Like, Cam is just if you can get him off balance, like, you can beat him in a straight line. It's not really that hard to beat him off the dribble. But
Marquette was trying to go at him early. They were trying to hunt him early.
I mean, that should be the game plan to beat UConn. You hunt Cam Spencer and you hunt Alex Carabin. If you have a big wing that can score and you have a 4-man that can get buckets, like those are the tough matchups. You combine that with getting Clingan in foul trouble, and that's kind of the recipe to beat UConn. But nobody, I mean, no one's figured it out yet.
And to me, though, the difference is, like, I think Castle's really good and has a lot of potential. I mean, I love Andre Jackson. Like, that dude he could go. So that to me, like, as excited as they are about Castle and as good as he can be when he's on, like, I think that's the difference there. Is like Andre Jackson was just another level when he was really going and probably a little more consistent. So I think that both teams' A games, I'd probably slightly favor last year's group, but this year's group could end up, I mean, if they go 38-2 and they win the national championship, I mean, that's going to be hard to argue against them. Now, they'll probably drop. I mean, I think Marquette's good enough to beat this team on, like, Marquette's home floor. But we'll see if they have this mental block when they have the rematch, and they'll probably drop it at least one more, you would think. And then anything can happen in the NCAA tournament. Even though I think they're the best team going in, I mean, they could run into somebody like Alabama who throws in like 15 threes.
It's why the tournament is the best way to determine a champion and the worst way to determine the best team in college basketball, right? Like,
absolutely.
Anything can happen in a 6-game tournament.
I mean, we've seen that with UConn teams that probably shouldn't have won, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
This is one of the years where they are the favorite. Like, does it flip because of all the?
Well, think about it like this: in 2011 and 2014, they probably shouldn't have won the title, right? In 2006, they probably should have won the title, and they lost to George Mason in the Elite Eight. Like, it's just it's the tournament. Stuff like this happens. I do think you have a good point, though, about Marquette. I feel like they missed like 7 or 8 really makeable threes in about the first 25 minutes of the game, where if those go down, it's a completely different story. And I think some of that was the environment. Some of that was UConn. Some of that was Marquette had an off night at the wrong time. But I don't think that they put it like this. What they did offensively was not a 28-point loss. I thought that they They weren't the better team, but I thought that it should have been a closer game than it was based off of the shot quality metrics. I didn't look at it, but if you look at that, I'm sure that it says that Marquette missed some shots that they could have made.
The challenge with UConn is when you're having those stretches, a lot of times the other team, as the lead starts to bloom, will give you a window where you can kind of sneak back in a little bit just because they just let off. It's just human nature. And that's where Connecticut's really special. Is they just, like we talked about earlier, they just don't let off. And that's how that thing got, really out of hand.
Yep. As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 each and every week of the college basketball season. We have a special offer that will be available starting on Tuesday, January 9th and running through Monday, February 12th, the morning after Super Bowl 58. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, in honor of the big game, you can use the bonus code FIELD158 and you'll get $158 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD158. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You'll receive $158 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD158 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create separate accounts in each state. It's easy, it's simple, it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the heart of the college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odd boosts, and my favorite, a nice juicy parlay boost. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Field 158. All right. You mentioned earlier Cam Spencer, maybe the most valuable player on the team, maybe the second most valuable player on the team. You got a story coming out about him.
Clingan's the most valuable. I'm not going to try to
put him. All right, so do this for me. Talk to me about what you like about his game, and give me a little tease. Give me a little taste of what you got coming for the story that we can pitch people, that we can get them to go sign up for The Athletic under CJ Moore. Make sure you give him credit for signing you up. He's doing a nice thing by coming on.
Click on my story first.
Yeah,
then sign up. So he's a pretty legendary trash talker. I'll give you that. And kind of getting into where that comes from, what's going on there, what charges him up. I mean,
everything. What charges you up, Kim? Oh, you know what? I stubbed my toe on the way in and I had to punt a basketball out of Gamble Pavilion as a result. I think he gets mad at everything.
There's
a mosquito buzzing in my ear, so I had to punch out a window.
there's some Dan Hurley in him, and that's what's different. And his level of care is probably top 0.0000001% in college basketball, maybe ever. This dude is wired different. So that I'll be getting into that, how he's on another level, and I don't think they knew that coming in. I think they had a sense that he was a good player and knows how to play, yada yada yada. I don't think you can't capture a guy's level of competitive nature until you really have him and you're building. So there'll be some of that in there, and then there'll be some surprises, to say that.
Yeah, good. The thing that I love about him so much is that you got this dude who looks like he should just be a frat boy at UConn, right? Who I don't think he can dunk. I don't know if you asked him this question, but I've talked to people around the Rutgers program. The guys at UConn wouldn't really give me a certified answer.
Even try.
Yeah, I don't think that he can dunk, right? And he just comes out here and he's doing all of the fundamental Billy Hoyle stuff, right? Where it's the jump stops, it's the pump fakes, it's the pass fakes, and he's got the 43-year-old father of three rec league game to a T, and then he comes out and he beats you, and he's cussing your ass out afterwards, and he's throwing shoulders into Ben Gold's chest up by 30 and pointing to the scoreboard. He's sitting here talking shit to Armando Bacot getting teed up. Like, I think that part of what, and I don't know if you're going to get into this, but I do think he realizes that, like, who he is and his appearance, when he starts talking this shit, it also gets in people's heads like, why this dude is kicking my ass and telling me about. I think he understands that when he, like, this persona, I don't want to say persona that he's cultivated, but when he plays like this, it can knock other people off of their game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it is mental warfare out there for him, and he's on another level. So no, it was fun to talk to him. And his brother got the hops. Like, his brother got the hops. He talked about that. You know, his brother's he can actually get up there and dunk. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you know, maybe he could. He's decent height. I bet he could get one down, but it'd be tough. He can't do one in a game, I don't think.
It's one of those ones where you got to jam the ball in there to palm it. You need a runway to get to the basket, and you got to stretch as much as you can, and you put the ball over the rim and then grab the rim down.
They'll probably hear about this and dunk at Creighton.
It's that we call that the Rob Doster dunk right there. That's what I used to do. Is you got to get the ball over the rim and then grab the rim.
I've never seen you inside a 3-point line in your life, so I don't believe it.
Well, the problem is, by the time that we started playing those pickup games, I was probably already 25 pounds heavier than I was in college, and I didn't have hops. I had the manufactured hops. I had to, like, use the jump soles. I had to do the plyos.
You and Jimmy.
Yeah,
you had those shoes, the Seinfeld shoes.
Yep, I had to get the jump soles and teach myself how to be able to jump. But when I was a senior, I could. There was one time in my life where I dunked 2 hands off of 2 feet, and that was when I was feeling like the most athletic that I've ever felt in my life. So,
all right, Uncle Rico.
Yeah, I know. And then it all went to shit after I got kicked off the team and put on 20 pounds like this. So, yeah, back to once you get to the glory days conversation of a podcast, I think that means it's time to wrap that up. So, if you're listening to this, guys, make sure you go. I'll throw a link to CJ's story on Donovan Clingan. There's some good breakdowns in there. He made it easy, so I don't have to go and explain to you why he's as impactful as he is. Go read that. Keep an eye out for the Cam Spencer thing. When it comes out, we'll be sure to publicize it from our channels. CJ, always a pleasure to catch up with you, man. I'm glad you enjoyed your time in Hartford. Oh, did you try any Connecticut pizza? Did you get the Pepe's?
No, I got suggested to go to Max's Oyster House, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I went there, and then it was good. And then while I was writing the story, I had to get some, like, delivery, so I got something barbecue, not the Black Eyed Sally's, but the other place down to Bears.
You're from Kansas City, and you go all the way to Connecticut, and you get barbecue.
It was fine.
Yeah, what are you doing, man?
I needed delivery, and the delivery options, I think, were not. I don't know. So Pepe's Pizza is. I mean, you didn't give me any kind of
Pepe's salad. I didn't even think about it because you were going to Hartford. You were going to New Haven, so I didn't. I didn't think I needed to tell you, first of all, to get pizza when you go to New Haven, Connecticut. Like, when you go to Connecticut, all you hear me talk about is Connecticut pizza. Unbelievable, CJ. You got barbecue in Connecticut. A Kansas City guy got barbecue.
I got to see what everybody else has, you know, like what are we up against?
That's like you sending me to a sushi restaurant next time I come to a Kansas game. So listen,
there's a couple decent sushi places,
good spots.
But that's why I went to got some freaking fish, because I was close to the sea. So
there you go. No, oysters are always a good call when you're in Connecticut. Listen, always good to talk to you, man. Always good to catch up. Glad you enjoyed your time. I'm glad you were finally able to make it home and wasn't that bad of a travel experience for you. So, CJ, always a pleasure, man. Thank you.